Hey guys, my name is Francisco Hernandez, and in today's video, I'm doing another episode in my Building the Shot series. If you guys are not familiar with what that series is, it's basically one that I created not too long ago, where I pretty much do my best to break down every single thing that I can think of about how a certain image of mine was created. In today's video, I'm going to be going over this image on the screen right here of a model and friend of mine by the name of Emily that I took back in April in St. Louis during the Shutterfest conference. I already done a bunch of episodes in this series, so in case you guys are wondering how I created any of the images that are on the screen right now, all of these images, you can check out the playlist that's going to be in the top right corner of the screen or in the description area below. I chose a lot of these images for specific reasons that I think would help you guys to learn more about in terms of if I use high-speed sync or not, if I use ND filters, the type of modifiers that I use, the lighting conditions, just a lot of different things. So I highly recommend you guys check out these different videos because I think you'll learn a lot. If you guys aren't already following me on Instagram, I highly recommend you at least check me out at FJH Photo, because another thing that I try my best to do is make every single post on my Instagram very educational. I share the Exif Data, I share the lighting information, I share behind the scenes photos for visual learners like myself. I'm going to start sharing the straight out of camera shots so you guys can see exactly where I started with the image. And I also share a lot of behind the scenes videos and photos from my photo shoots. And another thing that I want to do more is doing live videos from my photo shoots so you guys can tune in, ask me questions, and I answer them right then and there. Okay, so now that you guys know that I have an Instagram at FJH Photo, let's get to the reason why you're here, which is to learn a little bit about how I created this image on the screen right here of Emily from that photo shoot I did with her back in St. Louis during the Shutterfest conference in April. Before I start talking about the gear choices and the lighting choices, I do want to let you guys know how this photo shoot was set up, and it's honestly as simple as my friend Ivan Duran setting up the whole shoot and me just tagging along, assisting, and asking him if I can get a couple of shots in return. Throughout the entire Shutterfest conference, there was so many photo shoots going on. There's actually a lot of photo shoots going on in this image right here that you don't see. And I just pretty much hover around at a couple of different photo shoots, assisted, and asked if I can get a couple of photos in return. And honestly, a lot of people at Shutterfest are very nice and they'll let you get a couple of shots in. So I did my best to work fast as possible for this shot. I actually created it in about 2.5 minutes because I didn't want to waste anybody's time, especially Ivan's time, because it was his photo shoot. So again, this photo shoot was actually set up by Ivan, and I just happened to tag along and take some photos that he allowed me to take. I want to give him a huge thanks for doing that, for allowing me to take some photos, because he could have easily said no and let himself take all the photos for this photo shoot, but he said yes, and I created the shot, and I really liked it, and it's why I'm making this video. Now that you guys know how that photo shoot was set up, let's start talking about the camera and the lens choices. The camera that I used was the Sony a7R III. There's no special reason why I used that camera other than the fact that I love all the resolution that it offers, and it's one of Sony's latest cameras, so it has all the improved features that the older cameras don't have. The lens that I used was the Sigma Art 105 1.4. As I mentioned before, there was a lot of people in the background of the shot, so I really wanted to blur them. If I shot wide, I'd get all the people in the background unless I shot at a low angle, which I believe Ivan actually did. And if he did do that, I'll leave the image on the screen with his permission, of course, so you guys can see how that came out. For me, I pretty much just love to blur the background. If you guys are already familiar with my work, you would know this. So I'm not gonna lie to you guys, even if there's nobody in the shot behind her, I pretty much probably would just use the Sigma Art 105 1.4 and blur the heck out of the background like I did. Actually, now that I think about it, I also used the Sigma Art 105 1.4 later that night at another photo shoot that I did with my friend Sam with a model by the name of Hillary. If you guys are interested in knowing how I took this photo on the screen right here, you can check out the link that's in the top right corner of the screen. The Sigma Art 105 is a beast of a lens, so I did have my doubts about whether I should bring it with me or not to St. Louis for Shutterfest, but ultimately I did because I love the look that this lens provides. But if I needed to travel lighter, I probably would travel with my Sony 85 FE 1.8 lens. That's a really light lens. It's not too expensive either. If you guys don't have that lens, I highly recommend that you check it out. So that was pretty much the camera and the lens choices, which aren't too important in my opinion. What's more important in my opinion is the lighting choices, because I made my different lighting choices for specific reasons. I used the Godox AD400 Pro, also known as the Explore 400 Pro by Adorama, as the main light because it has a nice and bright mine lamp, which I actually don't use for its intended purpose, which is to preview how the light's gonna fall and where the shadows are gonna be, but I actually use it for another reason. Because I was shooting in a low light scenario, if I didn't use that mine lamp, then the pupil of the eye, the black part, would show up a lot more than the iris of the eye, the colored part. Since I'm a fan of colored eyes, I pretty much always want them to show up as much as possible, so that's why I use the mine lamp so that the pupil constricts and you see more of the iris of the eye. All that color is welcome to me and I'm a happy camper. I use the Godox B1, also known as the Flashpoint Zoom Lithium Ion X, as a rim light because again, I was shooting in a low light scenario and I did need some sort of separation from the model and the background, so that Godox V1 provided that nice separation on the background. And it also has a mind lamp, so I was able to preview how the light was going to fall. I do believe before I even took a couple of shots, I did have Ivan in the back there holding the V1 move a little bit so I can see exactly how I wanted it to fall, and I was able to see exactly how it was going to look like. The modifier that I used for the Godox AD400 Pro was a 24 by 24 inch softbox, which is my absolute favorite softbox to travel with because it folds nice and small, which is perfect to fit inside my Peak Design 20L backpack. This is a modifier that I talk about a lot in my building the shot videos because whenever I travel and take a shot that I really like, I'm more than likely using this modifier. It's very cheap, it's very affordable, it has double diffusion, and it fits nice and small like I mentioned before. I didn't use a modifier for the rim light because I honestly didn't even need one. It did its job, it provided nice separation between the subject and the background, so again, I was a happy camper. Before I forget, I do need to give a huge shout out to my friend Celester for holding the main light, the Godox AD400 Pro with the 24 by 24 inch softbox. It was actually on Ivan's stand, so also another thanks to Ivan for not only letting me shoot, letting me use the stand, but also holding the Godox V1 as the rim light. So huge thanks to them for helping me out. Now that you guys know why I chose that camera, that lens, and that lighting equipment, as well as how the shoot was set up, let's go into Lightroom so I can show you guys the straight out of camera shots so you can see exactly how they look like, as well as how I eventually came to that last image that I really liked and that I've been talking about this whole time. So what you're seeing on the screen right now is the test shot that I took to see if I needed to raise or lower the output of the flash on both the AD400 Pro and the V1. Although the mind lamp is going to tell you guys exactly how the light is going to fall and how the shadows are going to look like, it won't tell you if the flash output needs to be stronger or weaker. There is an auto mode called TTL, but TTL isn't always consistent. It might be too strong or too weak depending on how you use different things inside the camera, including the metering modes. So I always do my best to shoot manually because it's the best thing for consistency. I pretty much only use TTL when I need to go absolutely low on my light, because if you guys didn't know, using TTL actually allows you to go maybe up to 3 stops lower than the lowest output available to you that you can access manually on your light. In the shot that I took of Hillary in another building the shot video, you'll see that I used TTL for that exact reason, because I needed to go really low on my light. Once again, this was just a test shot, but one thing I want to let you guys know about is I didn't like the lighting on the main light, the AD400 Pro. I always like my light to be really close because it creates a nice impact and nice contrast on the skin, and it's also much softer. I also wanted the light to be a little bit higher, so I believe I asked Celeste Sprinkles to move a little bit closer and raise the light a little bit higher. This is the shot that I took after that last one, but one thing I want to let you guys know is even though I did pretty much remember telling Celeste to raise the light a little bit higher, it actually looks a little bit lower. If you pay attention to the nose, the shadow on the nose right here, you can see it's a little bit going down to the left, so that means it's a little bit high and to the right because of the way the shadow's falling. But on the second shot here, you can see that it's going, actually the shadow's going up, so it was at a low angle. That's why there's no shadow underneath her chin. So I believe maybe this is a situation where maybe Celeste was taking a break, lowering the light, and I took another shot and I was like, wait a second, the light looks different. So let's go ahead and see if in the next shot, okay, so he still hasn't raised it as much as I wanted to, but you can actually see a little bit of the softbox in the top right corner of the screen. Before I forget, let's talk about the settings. I used ISO 100, I shot at f1.4 because of that blurry background and to let in a lot of light, and I shot at 1/160th of a second. These settings were perfectly fine to me, but eventually what I would come to later understand is that if I shot at a little bit higher ISO and a little bit faster of a shutter speed, then I would have gotten less ghosting, which I'll show you guys in a bit. So just keep in mind, you always want to shoot at a low ISO, but sometimes shooting at a faster shutter speed might benefit you in other ways, like avoiding ghosting. Back to this image, I'm still not liking the lighting, so let's continue to see if I adjust anything. I think at this point I'm just taking a couple of photos thinking that my lighting is fine, but eventually I do move it or ask Celeste to move it, and then I ended up liking it more. So I think this is a situation for this image that I like this image. I brought up the exposure just a little bit, but it's not exactly how I love my lighting. So you can see that the light is a little bit closer now, just a little bit. And it's up until this shot right here that I actually really like the impact of the lighting on the skin and the softness. So at this point, I do leave the light there and I go ahead and just continue to take a couple more shots. The main thing that I'm pretty much looking forward to or looking to get a variety of is the different type of movement in the dress. So her pose was pretty much great to me. Her styling was great. So I was really just looking for any sort of variety that I can get specifically with that movement in the dress. Here's another couple of shots. Again, the only thing that I'm really getting out of here is different kind of poses from her looking up, as well as that movement in the dress. So I took a couple of shots of her smiling. I took maybe 2 shots there, and then I went back to being serious. Okay, this is just a mess up shot. She's, you know, not ready, but then again, she's smiling. She has her hand on her shoulder. I go ahead. I still like the lighting here, so I went ahead and just got a couple of landscape shots. I actually do really like this shot and this one as well, but I think I prefer that shot. And then after those, I went back to shooting in portrait orientation. I took this shot, wasn't exactly happy with it, but then once I took this shot, I was actually really happy with it, with her expression, the way that the dress is moving, and it's why I chose to edit this image. And I'll show you guys exactly how I edited this image in a second. So although I did use this image and I'm going to explain how I took this, I do want to show you guys a couple of the shots I took after this image, which are these ones right here. Sometimes when I really like a shot, I might stop right then and there and I'll take a behind the scenes shot. Other times I'll think maybe something could, something's different there, that I can take another shot of like her dress or hair movement, and I can just go ahead and manipulate the image and, copy some parts of the other images onto that image where I like her expression or something, and make an even better image. So sometimes I'll take a variety of different images after I took that one shot that I really, really like. So here she is looking up now. She has a different pose. I actually really like this shot here. I should have edited that shot, but let's go ahead and continue. I believe after I took this shot here, I thought this was another shot I really liked, so I went ahead and just grabbed a couple behind the scenes shots, which is this shot here. You can see Ivan right there. She's just holding the light. He's happy. And a couple of other bystanders around the area. Like I said before, there was a lot of photo shoots going on, so we made our best to shoot in that exact spot. Real quickly, before I show you guys the adjustments that I made to this image, I do want to show you guys the Exif Data. I took this specific shot at 7:33 p.m. and I took the very first shot at 7:51:23, which was 2 minutes and 10 seconds earlier. My whole point for showing you guys the Exif Data is because one thing I always do at my photo shoots is I try to time myself and work very, very fast and very, very efficiently, because I don't want to waste anybody's time, and I want to get better at getting the shots that are in my head out in real life and in a photo as fast as I can. So I definitely think you guys should do the same thing. Try to time yourself, try to do work really, really fast, and I think it's going to help you become a better photographer. One thing that I can't stress enough is good practice is if you're shooting with another photographer, if you're going to be shooting next after he's done, or if you're assisting them, one thing that you should be going through your head is, what are you seeing in the background? Test your different settings to see exactly how you want to expose that background. Look for different elements that you might want to incorporate into your image once it's your turn to shoot, and just keep pretty much doing photo shoots in your head. I do a lot of different photo shoots in my head when I just see random things out going on in public, and it's really hard to turn off, but I love it. It's like a little mini photo shoot in my head that I can do for fun. So this is the image after the adjustments were made, but let me show you guys exactly how they look like straight at camera, how this image looks like straight at camera, which is exactly how this shot looks like here. One thing you can tell is that it's a little bit underexposed. I want to let you guys know exactly why. Sometimes when I take an image with a bright LCD screen, it might look fine exposed on my camera, but once I bring it to Lightroom, it'll be overexposed, or actually underexposed a little bit. So I actually don't mind this at all, because one thing that always worries me is overexposing the highlights, blowing out the highlights. So I don't mind having a little bit of an underexposed image, as long as I can bring it up a little bit in exposure and still get the exact same quality and look that I got on the back of the camera. So again, all I had to do was just raise that exposure up to 85, and it brought it to a nice lively level. I also increased the colors. I always push the colors this way, which is in the calibration area. I always bring that blue primary saturation slider up to 60 to 80. It really increases all the colors, but sometimes it pushes the oranges a little bit too much, so I go ahead and just reduce them. Actually, for this shot, I believe I didn't adjust the saturation of the orange. So I will say that Emily is a little bit pale, so I guess it brought it up to a decent level, a normal level. No offense to Emily, but she is pretty pale, so I guess it brought up the oranges to a good amount level of orange. I also adjusted the hues of the yellows, and I also adjusted the blues, and I don't think I adjusted, okay, I did adjust a lot of blue. Let me see exactly what I did. I believe, yeah, that's the background, and the dress probably with the magenta. Yep, I made the dress just a little bit brighter by bringing up the luminance of the magentas. Those were the main things. I increased the shadows a little and the highlights decreased a little bit. But one thing I always do is just specific adjustment brushes. So I'm gonna hit K so you guys can see exactly what I did. and hover over this one here, which is, I painted a bit of exposure, 0.5, so you guys can see exactly what I did. Just a little bit of exposure over her selectively. And I can tell you right now that another thing I did was I always bring up the color of the eye, the exposure of the eye just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and click that and click delete, and then show you guys exactly what I did, which was brighten up the eyes just a little bit. After that, I pretty much didn't do anything. I exported the image into Photoshop, so I'll show you guys exactly how I edited it in Photoshop right now. Alright, so I'm not going to show you guys exactly every little step that I did, but I will explain a couple of the different things that I did. The first thing that I always do with my images, I always remove distractions. So one thing that's really distracting me in this image is the lights that are right there in the top left corner of the screen. I also didn't like the people that were underneath her dress that were in the background that were blurry. I'm going to show you guys exactly the layer that I did with all these different adjustments to remove those distractions, which is this group folder right here on the bottom called distractions. So it's quite a bit. I also made the people over here that are blurry, I made them a little bit green, sampled a little bit of the background that's around her, the color. I made a blank layer, painted that on there, and changed the blending mode to color. That made them kind of blend into that background right there. I used the stamp tool, the patch tool, and maybe the spot removal tool on the face to remove the distractions that were on the face, such as little blemishes. So that's pretty much everything I did for this layer. It was probably very tedious, but it wasn't anything too complex. The very next thing I did was dodge and burn. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys exactly what I did with the dodge by clicking the layer on and then clicking the layer off. The main part of it was the dress, but I'm gonna show you guys exactly what I affected, what I adjusted by holding down Alt and clicking on the mask. So yeah, you can see it was definitely just the dress there. And then show you guys exactly what I burned, which was just pretty much the leg shadow to get more defined leg shadow, more defined legs actually. So I'll show you guys exactly what I did. Yeah, very minimal dodge and burn. I also went ahead and just removed a little bit of that wrinkle there in the bottom of the dress. I also kind of minimized that highlight on the dress there. Let me just zoom in a little. So I felt like the dress had too much of a big blob of a highlight. So I sampled some of the highlight on top here, and then I just kind of copied it and pasted it there and just did a little bit of masking, clever masking, so that I can get it to a lower level of a highlight. The very next thing I did was I added a little bit of magenta to skin selectively because I felt like her skin was just a tad bit green. So I wanted to counter that by adding a little bit of magenta, which I used with the color balance tool. And you can see exactly what I did. I added a little bit of magenta to the skin right here. I'm gonna hold down Alt, click on the mask, and you can see that I pretty much just affected the skin because I did feel like the skin was a little bit too green. I also did a little bit of color grading, which you can see with this color balance layer. So I believe I added some reds, I added a little bit of yellows maybe to the skin. I always play around with the color balance tool. There's no specific thing that I do for every image. I just play around with it to get to the level where I like it. I also added a little bit of contrast by making a levels adjustment layer and darkening the blacks just a tad bit, and also raising the exposure just a tad bit as well. So I usually would call this folder contrast. So you guys can see it's a little bit brighter. I also made the dress, or actually the background right here, just a little bit brighter, just a tad bit, because I felt like I wanted it to show up a little bit more. So I just added a little bit of brightness to the background. I don't know what I did with this layer 23 here, so I'll just leave it alone. I added a little bit of frequency separation to the skin. You can't really see it from afar, so I'm gonna zoom in really close to her face. Let's see, really close. Okay, that's too close. All right, I'm gonna deselect the frequency separation and then select it again. So sometimes I feel like if the skin's just a little tad rough looking, or sometimes if they have very shiny skin, or if it's a hot day and they're a little bit too highlighty, if that's a word, I'll go ahead and use frequency separation to lessen the skin, make it not appear too harsh. So that's what I did with the frequency separation. And this next folder is called Distractions 2. So I'll let you guys see exactly what I did, which is here on the bottom here. I made the blur, the background blur, the bokeh, a little bit less apparent because I felt like it was too distracting, as well as removed this little bit of dress on the bottom here. Let me show you guys exactly. Another thing that I did was darken the highlight on the back there. You guys can see that right here. Toggling it off and on. And I also removed some of the stuff that was going on in the hair that I felt were distracting. and also liquefied the hair just a little bit, just to bring it more in line with the rest of the hair. I also darkened the bottom of the image to kind of just make a virtual grid. I had less spill on the ground because I wanted it just to be focused on her, the lighting to be on her. And the last thing I did was remove this little bit of, was it either hair or shadow, hair shadow. Yeah, I think it's shadow from the hair. And that's pretty much everything that I did. I'm gonna zoom back out and I'm gonna go ahead and just deselect all the different effects I did. That's how it looked like after Lightroom, and this is after Photoshop. Usually what I do after this is just resize the image to be 2048 pixels on the longest edge, which would be the height here, which is gonna be perfect for Lightroom. I'll also do a little bit of resizing for Instagram's crop, 4x5 crop. I just made a video on that you guys can check out in the top right corner of the screen. That's pretty much everything I did to create this image. If you guys have any questions about anything that I might have forgotten, let me know in the comment section below and I'll do my best to answer as soon as possible. Yeah, take care guys, and I'll see you in the next video. What you're seeing right now is the modeling lamp on the AD400 Pro and on the Godox V1 over there. And Ivan Duran is shooting over there.